This is Duke University.
What have you learned about the public's reaction to folks with AIDS and HIV based on the age of the person who's ill?
It's a good question. So I do think there's more sympathy, and I found it a little interesting, so I'm going to digress a little bit. The UNICEF data, the final thing that was straight from their slide where they say the majority of these were infected as babies. So I do think in general, society is much more willing to be sympathetic to someone who didn't do this to themselves, right? But many of us are guilty of probably having a sexual relationship where we didn't always use a condom, or, we can be pretty judgmental when we might be in a society where the risks aren't quite as high. So stigma is very rampant. I think there's more freedom if you can say I was prenatally acquired as opposed to behaviorally acquired. But by the time you hit adolescence, people don't know that. So I'll just give an anecdotal story. I have a taxi driver in Tanzania, and he knows the work that I do, and we were talking. And he said, I have to tell you something. And I said, okay. And he said, I had proposed to this girl, and my mom said we have to get tested first. And she was very reluctant to go get tested. Finally, she tested and she was positive. And he left lickety-split. The doctor told him to leave, basically. He had no idea that she could have had that her entire life from her mom. That idea hadn't crossed his mind. He'd never even heard of it. So I kind of have I love talking to taxi drivers wherever I go, because I feel like they're a pretty good pulse on what society thinks and does. And it really changed his mind, not to the point that he called her up and got back together with her. He's like, she's in college in another part. I haven't seen her since then. But it made him think and have a bit more sympathy to the fact that maybe, this has been real hard for her, and maybe she didn't want to tell me because she thought I'd leave, and he did. And I'm not judging that decision either, right? That's a really difficult decision, but it was definitely a piece to show how you acquired your HIV. You get different reactions from society. So in our disclosure session, the youth leaders actually were very much advocating that we have sort of a, how do you do this step by step? And step one is, do you trust the person? And step two is, what do they think about HIV? Just fill them out. And if you mention HIV and they turn hard and cold and judgmental, then they just stop there. And we're trying to change that, and how we do that with our intervention is that it's education. If I hadn't have then said to this taxi driver, she might have gotten that from her mom. And did you know if she takes her medicine, she can be fully suppressed? And did you know that there are many discordant couples who have children who are uninfected? The fact you could have a baby without HIV, people don't even understand or know that. And so a lot of these girls, the first story said, I don't want HIV because I would like to get married and have a baby. And for her, HIV means she can't do those things. And it's unraveling that yes, you can. It takes time, it takes patience, but we all have a role in teaching our society about HIV and the dangers and the not dangers. So a lot of what we do is educating. How do you get HIV? How do you not? If your friend on the playground won't play with you, what's he scared of? Using the cognitive behavioral trying, because he's probably thinking, I'm going to get HIV. So he's scared. His feeling is scared. So he avoids you. But if you can change that thought where he knows just by playing with you, I can't get HIV. Maybe I feel safe and maybe we can play. So it's kind of using all these tools to change stigma and education, and hopefully build a society where, you can have HIV and have a normal life.